Week 2, views on reading and writing. This is September 16th, the second video for my reading and writing remediation course. A later night video. It's currently... I can't zoom in. Just like 10. So, step 1 for myself is managed my time a little bit better. But there was not a reading, I don't even know what to call it, a 20-step course, some of which was videos by Dr. Leroy and others of which were videos by other teachers describing the 4 models of reading and talking about why it matters that we understand what the definition of reading is. In any definitions, there are 3 types of definitions: explicit, implicit, and tacit, T-A-C-I-T. So explicit definitions are ones that you can define. A cat is an animal with claws that is domesticated. Implicit are definitions that are implied by what you say, and tacit are definitions that are implied by what you do. So often with reading and writing, what a teacher explicitly believes about reading is often different from what they do, what they tacitly show. And often through observation, you can learn a lot about what someone believes in terms of what reading is based on what they do every day. So, adaptive teaching requires reflection, and this is a great place to start because we have to understand what reading and writing is before we learn how to remediate it or assess it. It's not assess it, diagnose it. So there's 2 types of teaching: adaptive and routinized teaching. This was Alan Luke. I really liked this little video. He's done a bunch of research in Singapore, and what he concluded was that there's a ton of different styles of teaching, all of which are helpful for different people, different kids, different cultures, and they have different cognitive effects. So you could have a social constructivist classroom, or you could have a direct teaching classroom, and the master teachers weave those through their practice, because there are some things that are better to just be told, and there are other things that are better to be found through constructivist approaches and hundreds of other approaches. He gives this example of learning to tie your shoes, and how no one just says like, hey kid, there's a pair of shoes, go discover how to tie them. You actually go behind the child and model with their own hands often how to tie shoes, and that's how everyone teaches kids how to tie shoes. And that's a mix of kinesthetic and direct teaching. So that was Alan Luke. So it's important to identify your definitions, because then you become explicitly aware of your views, and you're aware of the social constructivist views of this course, which Dr. Leroy did a great job of asking you to come along with, even if by the end of it you don't agree with them. Just come along for the journey. I really liked that. You can understand and consider theories of the resources that you're using and the resources you're using for testing, and you can negotiate with those who hold alternate views. That 4th point is a core reason why I'm taking my master's at all, is to be better informed when negotiating with others that have differing views that affect my practice. And so this course, at least this week, was really exciting in that way. So the core learning from this activity was that there's 4 models of reading. There's bottom-up, top-down, interactive or transactional, and 21st century. So starting with the bottom-up framework, there's 4 Samuels, Go, Shaywitz, and Valentino. This is the view that reading is a linear process from decoding through fluency to comprehension. Reading is decoding. When you're reading, you decode words. That's what reading is. Comprehension follows, and it is important, but comprehension is not the definition of reading. This is a view of reading as a whole process, when first you learn how to decode, and then you learn to read. This bottom-up framework rings a ton of bells when it comes to how our literacy program is developed, and Andrea's view of reading. So I'm hoping to chat with her about that. So there's a video of an example of like someone teaching as cat, and teaching the phonics first and then the blends from the bottom up of reading. Some of the implications for bottom up is that the testing and program focuses on word recognition, spelling, and printing. Accuracy is really important. And it prioritizes literal comprehension. So what happened in the story is more important than what is the overall meaning of the story. And it's also associated with a behavioralist approach of repetition and drill of these skills. A reaction to the bottom-up framework that happened in the 70s and isn't recognized currently in a lot of research is the top-down theory. Dr. Leroy called this the hippie theory, which I thought was funny. It's the opposite of bottom-up, and it was a reaction to bottom-up. And it also believed that reading was linear, but that it began with your prior knowledge, your predictions, your expectations, and that all of the understanding of what you were reading was in the reader. They described reading as a psycholinguistic guessing game where you use the text at a minimal amount, and that the meaning is the most important part. I actually see a lot of this in students, right? Kids that are reading a book don't really care what the word actually says. They just care what the meaning is. And I think about when I read the Harry Potter series, and I could not, like, Hermione wasn't Hermione until I started reading it out loud. To me, it was just like, that's just the girl's name, and I didn't need to know what it was. When you're teaching that, there aren't any video examples of teachers teaching a top-down theory because you don't really teach anything. You let the students learn on their own, and that isn't found in a lot of pedagogical practices anymore. And you wouldn't assess it either because the meaning is found in the student. There was a video of a 2-year-old trying to read and just like hilariously saying whatever blabber she wanted when she was reading these picture books, and it was interesting. It was the early experience of reading, which had a lot of value, but was also just wrong. Like, she wasn't finding meaning in the book or learning to read as you might understand it. Number 3, interactional transactional framework. This is what our view in the course will be, and it's kind of a combination of Rummelhart and Goodman and Louise Rosenblatt, and it's an attempt to reconcile the bottom-up and top-down approaches to reading. It's not linear. It's a recognition that reading does not go 1, 2, 3. It's a combination of everything. And the huge addition that Louise Rosenblatt added to this theory was that different parts of readings cannot be detached from each other. So you cannot just do decoding. You cannot just do fluency, because reading is reading and it's transactional. It's active. It's not linear. They believe that the meaning is in the reader, but it's created through the transaction of the text. And that depending on the purpose of the reading, there's either more meaning in the text or more meaning in the reader, which makes sense to me too. If you're reading a textbook to find out what the population of France is, then the meaning is in the text. You just read that meaning. But if you're reading some fiction, then the meaning that you bring to it is more important than the literal words on the page. I'll show you a little thing I drew real quick here. It's just a spectrum from text as the meaning to the meaning is in the reading. Bottom up thinks that all the meaning is in the text itself. Top down thinks that all the meaning is in the reader itself. And interactional transactional framework shifts depending on the purpose of the reading. I don't know if you saw it or not because I can't see. What do you see? Finally, 21st century theories. These are new theories, some of which critique the framework of this course, which is kind of cool to admit. This transactional framework, I think, started in like 1980 something. So it's quite old now. It's like 30 years old, and there has been some new ideas that do criticize the framework. There's one critique of the idea of looking at an individual and not looking at the environment. I don't really understand that critique, but I'm interested in it. Another one is that the transactional framework focuses too much on print reading and writing, and that there's all these new literacies that we need to recognize. There's an interesting question asked about do you prefer working with individuals or making big changes? And I think that's something kind of cool to think about. I'm definitely on the individual side right now, but I don't know where I'll end up. So one of the 21st century theories is that literacy is a social practice. It is all about the system of which you're reading or writing in, and it's a very social thing. And there are so many more literacies that you may recognize. So the teacher talked about being an associate professor and how there's a whole new culture, whole new system of language when you're writing for like a university paper or whatever it is. I find this when I write report cards, that to me that's a different language than when I write emails, which is a different language than when I write stories, which is a different language than when I write tests or whatever, which is a pretty cool acknowledgement. There's an awesome video of a mother reading with a child and just kind of modeling reading and the child learning as she went, which was pretty awesome. So another idea is critical literacy, which is a recognition of who has the authority of the text, what counts as meaning and who gets to decide. And this shifts depending on what the text is. But it's important to recognize that often when you're a teacher, you are the source of authority of the text. And sometimes that's good because we do need to have constraints on meaning. Red can't just be blue. I mean, it can, but it shouldn't if we want to have common understandings. But if the authority doesn't recognize that they hold that power, then that can be bad. And then we watched a video of literature circles, which I want to do more research of, but it seemed kind of like you get in a small group of 4 or 5 and you read the same book, and every chapter you just talk loosely about the book, kind of like a book club, but inside the classroom. And there's this grade 4 class, they're talking about Sign of the Beaver, which is one of our grade 5 books I thought was interesting. And just seeing the kids really engage with the text was really neat. And then of the focus on the fact that there are new literacies, things like Facebook or Snapchat or Reddit, or in a video game, when you have different expectations for those conversations and they all mean different things. And that's becoming increasingly complex. And so that being recognized is pretty neat. So that's my video from week 2. It's way longer than most. It's 13 minutes, but there was a lot there that I went through, and that's without me even talking about the reading, which is like the core reading as transactional framework. If you made it this far, Mom, I think that's you. I'm just going to remind myself, and Christina, clearly, I'm going to remind myself to chunk out more time during the week, to do a little bit on more days. I actually have to because I need to post and then reply every week, and I kind of didn't do that this week. But I was super inspired with this lecture because it gives me a really good frame of reference for how people think about reading and what kind of frames there are. And when I feel that administration is being too bottom-up with reading, I can actually say, like, oh, I recognize that Valentino may say that, but Rummelhart actually in 1988 replied with the criticism that, da-da-da. And I mean, I can't fully do that yet because I haven't read any of their actual pieces, but I will be able to soon, which is very fun.